Are you saying you faked with me?
Yeah.
Wrong. Now you're single.
What do you know about sexual relations?
Is it true that if you don't use it, you lose it?
I'm a little worried about being a slut.
You're listening to the Come With Us podcast, talking the good, the kinky, and the ugly. Here are your hosts, Beth, Aaron, and Tina.
Hello, 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 all you sexy holes and poles. Welcome to Come With Us podcast. We've got everything that men want to know about love, sex, and relationships. We know that sexy stuff matters as much as the lovey-dovey stuff, maybe even more, depending on the person. But we are here to help you get all of the pleasure that you deserve and you want. I'm Beth Darling from BethDarling.com here with Tina and Aaron. And today we are talking with Powerful Eric. And Powerful Eric is so named because he struggled with porn addiction and traditional recovery methods for decades. But finally, one day he realized that by calling himself powerful, he gave himself the strength to overcome his addiction. And we're going to talk with him about his experience and his recovery from porn addiction. And Eric is now the host of a 5-star rated podcast called Porn Talk. He's also a porn and sex addiction recovery coach and co-author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Think Big. Eric helps addicted men worldwide not only break the habit of porn, but transform their sexual energy to repair relationships, increase sales, and vigorously pursue a great life. So welcome, Eric. Thanks so much for joining us again.
This is powerful, Eric. I'm here.
Yeah. You know what I really like is I like people who don't take themselves so seriously, and you absolutely are one of them. So thank you, right? The world is better when we can all expose ourselves and be proud of who we are and recognize that none of us are perfect. God forbid.
I don't recognize that you expose yourself. You go to jail for that. You go to jail for that. And you know, it is so refreshing, Beth, to take off the mask and just be who I am rather than trying to be this other person.
Yes.
Yes. I'm relaxed. Just be the pole that I am.
A sexy pole. I'm a sexy hole. So there you go. We all have our things. So, all right. Well, I love it. And last week we left off with the subject of tapping. So I would love for you to tell us more because people may have heard of tapping, may not have. Some people think it's kind of a hippy dippy, woohoo sort of magic thing. But tell us how tapping helped you and what it is, please.
Well, first of all, tapping, I don't mean putting on tap shoes and tapping.
That's what I thought you meant when you said it last week. I was like, oh, my wife knows how to tap dance, but no,
really?
I'm not learning how. Yeah.
I didn't know she did.
Yeah, she
That's
was a
awesome.
dancer for a long time.
Wow. Learn something new. Okay.
Yeah. So no, it has nothing to do with that. It means you're tapping on your acupuncture or acupressure points. You say words in a certain way. And by the way, you can use this on a lot of different things. Traumas, for example, like if you had some childhood trauma, one that PTSD, soldiers coming back from war. This is a very popular with veterans to get over these traumas. And what I found is with working with a lot of people and including myself is that most people have at least some mild type of trauma from a long time ago or maybe recent. And so like in traditional methods, you may uncover a trauma, but then it's like, okay, well, there's the trauma. There it is. Let's talk about it. And you talk about it and you talk about it and you talk about it. And maybe in a decade or so, you can bring down the severity level of that. With tapping, you can find that trauma and tap on it and bring down the severity of it pretty quickly. And what happens, it's like an onion. You start tapping on, for example, porn addiction. And then you discover, there's this thing that happened to me. Maybe you were molested or something like that. I was not, but maybe you were molested and you start tapping on that issue. You bring that down and then another issue comes up. So you get down to like the core of this issue and it works. It works. I just got a book that compiled all of many of the studies on EFT or emotional freedom technique or tapping. And a person, like you were talking about it being woohoo, a person's belief in it does not change the fact that it works. Like, person be going, I don't know if this is going to work or not. That's irrelevant. If you do it in the way it's intended, it works.
Oh.
And just to piggyback off that, you started by saying like tapping uncovers like an onion, right? So specifically with like porn addiction, and we talked about this when we were off camera a little bit. Do you think that it comes with other underlying issues? Like it results from, like I said, loneliness, and then Beth kind of built on that and said like, maybe a really bad heartbreak, or you have anxiety and you don't like to go outside, or you're depressed or something, and then you isolate yourself. Is that kind of correct?
Absolutely correct. Yes, to all of the above. We use it to numb, cope, and escape, but usually it's not in a conscious way like, oh, I'm feeling depressed, so I'm going to go use porn. No, your brain's like, oh, we're not feeling too good. Let's get on the porn. So it's like I would end up on a porn site. I'm like, how did I even get here? Like I was on Facebook, and then now I'm in a couple hours into porn.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I think it's a little bit of like an adrenaline rush, right? Like for me, when I feel those ways, it's like, oh, I want a cookie, or I want ice. I want sweets. I just crave sweets so badly, and I know that's my addiction.
Well,
I mean, that release too is definitely
it's your body looking for the chemical high. So especially like you said, if you feel bad about yourself, if I were to look at myself in the mirror right now, I feel like myself, I need to get in better shape. But I could easily mask that pain if I went and just, jacked off for an hour. Like I would get done with it and I'd be like, okay, I feel better. But then I would walk in front of a mirror again and go, God damn it. I was supposed to go to the gym and I got distracted. Like It's your brain searching for the fastest way to get to that chemical release. And you can get that chemical release by putting on shoes and going out and running 2 miles. And then you get that feeling of like elation that like, hey, I exercised. There's a lot of chemicals running through my body that make me feel better about myself. Or I can watch a really hot chick get railed by like 3 guys and I'll get the same effect. And I don't have to like sweat or do anything like that. Or like all I have to do is like grab. Shoes. Yeah. Like, yeah.
I call them brain cookies. I say your brain is going to get those brain cookies one way or another. So you can give them your brain healthy cookies by like going for a run and getting that runner's high, or you can get brain cookies by whacking at porn.
Yep. I know Beth loves that. She loves cookies.
Yeah.
So I'm sure she loves that analogy.
Yeah. And actually maybe it'll help me give cookies that are different than my regular, but all right. Well, but going back to you, so in scoping out your website and everything, and tell us your website again. Tell our listeners.
PowerfulEric.com.
There you go. PowerfulEric.com. I love it. All right. You got to tell us about your mascot. It's the cutest thing. I did not expect to laugh when thinking about porn addiction.
He's a little wiener man. So basically, the mascot, his name, I had a contest to name him, and his name ended up being Raging Richard, because what I found for myself and my clients is that after you stop using porn, you uncover some of the emotions that you were trying to bury, probably subconsciously, and that is anger. And mine came out as rage.
And Richard, right, Dick is the nickname for Richard. So that's perfect.
Exactly. Yeah. So the joke is, don't be like Raging Richard. Don't be a dick.
Yeah, it's very funny. It's like a penis with like giant bulging eyes.
Not bulging eyes, bulging eye.
Bulging eye. One bulging eye.
Like
very
bloodshot red, like you would get from, I mean, everybody knows this now, and the world we live in, everybody has to work with some type of computer, but now there's actual studies that show like, hey, looking at a screen for 9 hours straight a day is not good for you, and it does dry out your eyes. That's why they make now blue light glasses and all that stuff, and they tell people get away from a computer. Like, even if it's your job, you need to get away at least 30 minutes for every half hour or something like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, that makes sense.
Wow.
And so Raging Richard, he's a penis that has arms, and he's got the big eyeball, and he's intently looking at his smartphone. So
Oh,
he is intently looking at his smartphone. It's not just porn. It's not just the porn. Raging Rickard is addicted to these devices. And originally the concept, when I gave the artist my idea, is I wanted him to be the porn monster. Like the porn was the bad thing. But
right.
after time, I realized, no, that's not the case, in that part of us that may crave that porn or whatever, it's not a bad side of us, and it's not something that we should get rid of. It's there for a reason, and I believe one of the reasons there is just to teach us, to help us. And the question I will always ask a client is, what purpose was it serving in your life? What and where does I have them come up with what's called their sub-personalities, and we ask them this part of their sub-personality, the addictive part of their sub-personality. And I have them name them. Mine is Jerd. And I asked Jerd, where do you come from? And the more important question is, what do you need?
Mm. So, what does your Jerd need now that you don't watch porn? What fills your Jerd?
That's a great question. Because you're right. Like, you have innumerable amount of time now that you don't spend watching porn. So
Yeah.
Jerd needs a lot of things. It changes. It's not always the same, but I would say to be recognized.
Oh,
interesting.
okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
and there's many other things, but
And in the context of your relationship, do you find that,
Well, how did you
Yeah,
tell your wife?
exactly.
Right? She marries you, and 2 weeks later, you start losing yourself in porn again. Because listeners, if you didn't listen to the first episode, I strongly encourage you to do so. But we talked about you'd had this addiction for a long time. You had done so many different things to try and rid yourself of it, and yet you got married, think you got it. Hey, I'm good, and then 2 weeks later, you're watching porn again.
Mhm.
yeah. So how it happened? Well, she didn't find out like right away, but she did walk in on me a couple times, just going at it. And but
What was her response?
well, she has an open mind, and she was not really judgmental at all. And she was like, that's what all guys do.
Yeah.
But I can say all guys don't do it. But anyway, she was like, yeah, that's what all guys do. And she didn't think it was a big deal, which is the complete opposite of when my clients contact me. But anyway, she didn't think it was a big deal, but she did not realize the effect that it was having on myself and our marriage.
Yeah.
And what kind of finally prompted, did she end up realizing? Did it get to a point where it was so much?
Well, I disguised it well, because, for example, if I was feeling a compulsion to want to have sex or whatever, oftentimes I would choose the porn instead. So she didn't realize that I was doing that.
Right.
So it was just like, he's just not asking for sex as much. So, so she didn't really see it, but it was so clear to me. It's like, yeah, I'm choosing to stare at an elaborate machine that puts small dots on the screen, pixels, and I want to choose to stare at that thing for hours rather than to be with my wife.
Wow.
So, this is just going into my logistical brain. Obviously, you weren't doing it in the same room as she was, but were you doing it in the house? Were you just finding your own way, to sneak off on a different part of the house where she wasn't?
Yes.
Interesting.
And she usually goes to bed fairly early and almost never gets up. So I had a laptop. I was sitting just out in the living room, and this was before my boys were born. And just happened to come out, which she never does. And I'm like, ah, but it was too late. She called.
But she didn't know, like, obviously when she walked in on you doing it, she didn't realize like how long you'd been sitting there, like into what we went to last episode, like in a porn wormhole. She just thought, hey, well, the mood struck him. He decided to do that instead of waking me up, kind of thing. I'm assuming.
Yeah, you're right. And not knowing that, not realizing that, he's going to stay up till, 2, 3 a.m. Going at it.
Wow.
And did you finally have to admit to her? So how was that? Like, what was that process like?
Yeah. So I'm like, I am full bore back into it. And, I was basically like, this is a problem for me. Like I'm wasting a mammoth amount of time. There's a thing in finances called opportunity cost.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there is a huge opportunity cost. It doesn't matter if you're spending money on it, you're spending a mammoth amount of time.
Mhm.
I was spending a mammoth amount of time. And one of the opportunity costs was I had a friend that I was supposed to meet for lunch. She was dying from breast cancer. And I lost track of time, whacking it to the porn, called her up and said, hey, I'm sorry, something came up. I lied, which is often what an addictive person will do, is lie. And I told her something came up. Can we meet another time? She's like, sure, no problem. Met up with a friend soon after, and they said, did you hear? I'm like, hear what? About Heather. I'm like, what about Heather? I just talked to her the other day. Heather died.
Oh, shit.
So I chose to use pornography rather than being with my friend. So,
And I mean, that is, if you think about other addictions and stuff like that, basically, you tend to negate things in your life, and then they become more and more important until I think you reach a point where you can't do anything else. So
was that your bottom? Is that what prompted you then to come out to your wife?
it certainly was a big one. It was a big one, but I had multiple bottoms.
Wow.
But in a nutshell, in relationships, this addiction is wreaking havoc on the globe. And the reason I say globe is I literally have men, I'm talking like from third world countries, reaching out to me for help. And I feel so bad for these guys because some of these guys are in some very religious, restrictive places. And they're like, Eric, you're the very person that I've ever spoken to about this. I'm like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
And, I talked about the kids, but so there's a group of divorce attorneys, and they said that the statistic has raised over 50% of marriages that end cite porn as at least a contributing factor to the divorce.
Wow.
And was your wife understanding? Did she, was she supportive of you or was she?
She was, and I got to say, I mean, at least from the guys that I work with, she's the exception. Yes, she was supportive, and
most spouses you find aren't supportive.
No, I find most of them are not, and
Interesting.
that a lot of them are like, this is your problem, you got to take care of it. And so I work with my cohort, Beth. She will coach the wife. If it's a married man, she will coach the wife while I'm coaching the husband to get over the addiction. And it's really extremely helpful if you can get the wife on board. But sometimes I can't get the wife on board. And it's just so much easier if you can get the wife.
And that's crazy because and I've said this before, I had a professor in college that studied addiction, and her whole thing was that a bunch of her focus was there are some people form an addiction just because, but a big bulk of the people that she studied have addictive personalities in that, they started off with smoking and then they went and they quit smoking, but they picked up gambling, and then they quit gambling, but they picked up alcohol, and then they quit alcohol and they picked up sex. Like it's an addictive. It was a chemical imbalance that she was trying to prove that is in the head, that you have an addictive personality, and just no matter what, you're trying to search for a constant fix of like almost like a like an OCD kind of thing, where you have to constantly find that fix of being addicted to something. And these wives who wouldn't be on board of like, hey, admitting to your significant other, like that's the person you want to spend the rest of your life with, and then some, hey, I have a problem and I need help. If they did that with alcohol or with drugs or anything like that, I feel like most of them would be like, okay, let's, I'm on board, let's get you some help. But because it's of a sexual nature, they're like, yeah, no, it's not my problem.
Yeah. Well, two things. One, you're reminding me, talking about switching addictions. There's a song from the 80s by a guy named Adam Ant. He had a song, "Don't drink, don't smoke. What do you do? Don't drink, don't smoke. What do you do?" And yeah, a lot of guys are picking this one, and kind of lost my train of thought there.
Wives and if they were to support their husband being an alcoholic and trying to help versus saying sex, it's not it's not my problem kind of thing.
Yeah. So what happens is if a guy comes to the wife and says, "I'm addicted to alcohol," they're like, yeah, that's something you need to deal with. That's if they come to them with drugs, that's one thing. Another thing, but when they come to him with a porn or sex addiction, it's like, what did I do wrong? I must not be having sex with them enough. I must not be doing it the right way. And it becomes this thing that it's, about them.
Right. Or they don't look the right way, or their boobs aren't big enough, or this isn't tight enough, or blah, blah, blah. My ass isn't this. So yeah, I think that's a big part, is that immediately it's like, oh shit. And then we get defensive. Like, oh, we don't want to look. And it's hard.
And I tell the wives, I say, it doesn't matter if you were swinging from trapeze from the bed. It doesn't matter if you looked like, beyond a 10. This is beyond that.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll say, so I have had issues with being involved with a sex addict, porn addict. And it is pretty damn brutal, I have to say. And weirdly, I carried a lot of shame moving forward. And it's horrible. Like it makes me want to cry and stuff. So I get it. And it is a big deal. And I'm so glad that you have a colleague who then works with the partners, because they deserve it. And there's just a lot, because it has such an effect on the relationship in ways that are hard to identify. And because with alcoholism, at least you can talk about it in this world. But again, when it comes to sex and porn, we're not very comfortable talking to our neighbors or friends or something. We now can go out with people who will say, "Oh, I'm in recovery, I'm not drinking." Everybody says, "Oh, good for you. That's awesome." That doesn't really happen so much when it comes to sex and porn addiction.
Yeah, it's a different animal. I mean, and think about this. Like if you're addicted to drugs or alcohol, that's something outside of you. But with your body, you have your mind that has scanned in countless amounts of porn. And basically, wherever you go, or for a guy, wherever you go, you bring your penis. Whereas you don't bring drugs and alcohol wherever you go, but certainly you bring your penis wherever you go, unless it's detachable. And that reminds me of another song from the 80s.
Oh, God.
What was the group? I can't remember the group. There's a hilarious song called "Detachable Penis."
Oh my gosh.
And the song is about a guy who had a detachable penis. And like, if he wanted to go out and his wife or his girlfriend wasn't trusting him, she'd say, "Okay, hand me the penis." And so one night he goes out to the bar and he gets drunk and he loses his penis.
Yeah.
Oh my
King
God.
Missile.
So then, yeah, that's it.
That was actually the 90s.
Okay, 90s.
Wow.
And he so he loses his penis, and anyway, he's in like New York City. He's walking down the street. There's vendors selling a bunch of crap, and he noticed one of the vendors is selling his penis. So the guy was asking for $20. He talks him down to 17. He gets his penis and he's back off.
Oh my God.
It's
That's very creative.
I like your depth of knowledge of just out there songs from years gone by. I feel like I finally found like a worthy foe of like, oh hey, I remember this. Like that's how I made a lot of my livings in radio, is going, hey, does everybody remember that song from 1994? It came out August 17th. And everybody be like, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's okay. So now you've got your penis back.
Yeah,
got the penis back, and I bring levity to it because it's a really heavy topic.
Yeah,
I know.
Gotta have some fun.
Yes,
But like you said, you're kind of right. You can't go anywhere without your sexual organ. But do you find that this addiction comes along with other, like, do people just generally have addictive personalities who have porn addictions, or do you find that they have addictive personalities?
Yes, you guys ask some very good questions. I say that bad habits have bad buddy habits.
Right.
So if you're addicted to porn, it's very likely that you have other ones that are buddies. For example, for myself, I would just binge on porn. Then I would go and binge on fast food.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to be much heavier than I am now because I would be that porn glutton and then have to go and be a food glutton.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to answer your question shortly, is that yes, absolutely. There's usually it may not be anything big, or maybe it is. Maybe it's drugs and alcohol, but yes, they usually.
Or I'm thinking sex addiction, obviously. The physical sex addiction, maybe. But
Yeah, and that's the progression. So you may not start out as really like a sex addict per se.
Mm-hmm.
You get to the point where it's like, man, I've gone as far as I can go with the porn. I'm ready to go out to the real world, and that's what I found that I started doing.
Oh wow,
the real world, and that can get very dicey. I know a man right now who's literally in jail over this. I know another guy who killed himself over this. This can get very dark.
When we had this therapist on, she did explain like the progression, and similar to what you explained with porn addiction, you have to keep feeding that like newness, that you're finding the next thing and the darker thing, and eventually, even I'm sure with porn addiction, you can get to a point where you cross a lot of boundaries, both, for yourself but even like legally and stuff. So,
well, and I will say what I've seen also is that sometimes people are hiding in porn to try to stop themselves from acting out, in real life in ways that they know are not really ways that they're going to be comfortable with. And yet, when you don't deal with that underlying urge, masking it with porn or with sugar or with alcohol, these things work their way to the top, which is really not good.
We call it feeding the right wolf. So that example about, I don't want to go out in the world and do these things, so I'll use the porn. Well, you're feeding the wrong wolf. There's a story about a young Native American boy and his Cherokee grandfather, and the son is having this conversation with his grandfather, and the grandfather is talking about the two wolves that are inside of us, and that there is a great fight going on within everyone between these two wolves. This one wolf is pain and suffering and addiction and anger and rage, and the other wolf is peace, serenity, tranquility, love. And this battle is going on between all the time. And the young boy asks his grandfather, well, if this fight is going on within everybody, which wolf wins? And the grandfather says, the wolf you feed.
Huh. That's a great analogy. Really good analogy. I think that's a good way to kind of end up like wrapping up. I think there is light at the end of the tunnel.
There is.
There is.
Yeah.
And if I could leave you with some hope,
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah.
like
Exactly.
I was addicted to porn for decades. If I can overcome it, you heard how long I was doing it. If I can overcome it, you most certainly can do it. Most people wouldn't have to wait 20 years before they would say, maybe I should do something different. You're probably a lot smarter than me. So there is hope for you.
I love that. And how long have you been married now?
Coming up on 11 years.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. And that's again, and you've got kids and you're happy.
I have a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old. And yes, I have talked to my 7-year-old about porn. I read a book to him called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. It is about some of the dangers you can fall in pornography. It's really well done. Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. Highly recommend it.
Yeah, that sounds
great.
like a useful thing. A
Yeah.
lot more people, I think, need to be talking to children about this.
Absolutely. The age used to be around 12 that the average kid started using porn. It's now dropped to around 8 or 9.
Oh, ow.
Yeah, that's just wild.
They don't look for it. They stumble across it. So
Yeah.
if you have children and they have their own devices and you don't have filters on it, you're going to have some challenges.
Yeah.
And I'll say, even if you try and protect your kids, the fact is their friends may have it and stuff. And
They will. They'll show it to them.
when I was a kid, my siblings, they went out in the woods behind our house and they stumbled across a Playboy. They were probably like 5 or 6.
Mhm.
They took each picture, they let it dry out across the garage and stuff, right? And now we can laugh because that was fairly harmless.
Yeah.
But nowadays, it's true. What they stumble into online could be just way more than they begin to process. So.
Yeah. If you have young kids, please put on a porn blocker. I mean, yes, their friends are going to show it to them. And so you need to have a proactive conversation, an ongoing conversation, not just about porn, but about sex.
Yes.
We've talked about this a lot. How we all have a little bit of a gripe and how sex is taught and discussed with children or in school and stuff
Barely
like that.
taught.
So
Yeah.
Barely taught.
yeah, barely taught.
Yeah.
So
And one conversation is never going to be enough. So I love that you start early and that opens the door that, right, porn exists. It's here to stay. And now how do we think about it? How do we deal with it? And to let kids know, and to let other adults know if this is an issue for you, you don't have to keep it to yourself. We get it. I understand the shame. I recognize it. And yet I hope that conversations like this and all of your work, Eric, really encourages others to be like, I don't have to keep living like this. Because again, forgetting anybody else, each of us deserves a good life.
Absolutely.
One that we're proud of. So thank you, Eric. This has really been a pleasure and eye-opening, because there are some things that we may not have realized about people around us and their porn use and effects on not just their life, but relationships. So, all right. So again, please tell people where they can find you, Eric.
You can go to powerfuleric.com or go to my podcast, porntalk.org. And I got to say, I come bearing gifts. If you mention your podcast and email me, eric@powerfuleric.com, I will send you a free copy of my audiobook, Everything You Know About Sex and Porn Addiction Is Wrong, the 21 Myths About Sex and Porn Addiction.
Ooh, all right. I love that.
Interesting.
So again, send Eric a message, mention Come With Us podcast, and get a free copy of his audiobook. That's awesome. I have not listened and I would like to.
Yeah,
so I'm
me
going to
too.
be one of the first to do so. So, all right. Well, thank you, Eric. This was amazing. And I am so glad that you are out there sharing yourself, exposing yourself in all the best ways and in a way of helping others. So, and appreciate you being here with us.
My pleasure.
Good.
Go forth and be powerful.
Yes, be powerful and come with us podcast. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We're so glad that you're part of the naughty, sexy, fun, and frankly, and the real, the good, the bad, the ugly, about love, sex, and relationships. I'm Beth Darling at BethDarling.com. Aaron and Tina, thank you for being here. It's another great week, and big hugs, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Come With Us podcast. Be sure to follow us on social media at Come With Us Podcast and send in your questions, comments, and confessions to comewithusconfessions@gmail.com. Until next time, keep it fun, flirty, and naughty.